I'm sort of curious, how has the act of saying goodbye to Daniel changed over 40 years? And which final cut was the toughest for you to hear over that time?
That's a good one. Good question.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Mr. Macchio, it is always an honor, sir. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you.
Good to see you, Jake. Good to see you.
I'm going to jump into this. I feel like more than 40 years, you've had to say goodbye to this character time and time again. I'd imagine you probably never assumed you were going to do a part 2. After part 3, I'd imagine you probably thought, I'm done. You finished Cobra Kai and think, okay, maybe this is it, but now you're coming back to the big screen this summer. I'm sort of curious, how has the act of saying goodbye to Daniel changed over 40 years? And which final cut was the toughest for you to hear over that time?
That's a good one. Good question. Well, I knew I was doing part 2 of the movie when I did the first one. So the goodbye, but after part 3, Karate Kid part 3, I thought, this headband is going to go in the closet and in the drawer, and that would be the end of that. So and with Cobra Kai, it was a careful, it took me a while to say, yes, let's try this again. It was, I said no a bunch over the decades, but this was, I come up way smarter than I am for saying yes. And these writers and creators have done a beautiful job of sustaining this story, but it feels the right time to bring Cobra Kai proper in for a landing. And, would I have thought that I'd be back on the big screen in this character coming up end of May? Never say never. Everyone says, are you sad that Cobra Kai is ending? And I look at it as not goodbye. I look at it as see you next time. The fans will not let these characters rest. And certainly this character has been a piece of pop culture, let alone my best friend in life, if you will. No matter how many silly mistakes he makes, he kind of winds up back on his feet and at the end of Cobra Kai in a very good and positive way. So I'm feeling good about it all.
I'd love to know, the year of 1984 was just so nuts as a movie fan. In addition to Karate Kid, we got what? We got Ghostbusters, Beverly Hills Cop,
Raiders.
Gremlins, Raider. Oh yeah, we got Temple of Doom, Dirty Dance or Footloose, I think. I'm just sort of curious, as I know you're a movie fan, what that year was like for you. And also you were kind of a part of that first generation of movies that we got to experience on VHS over and over again in our basements, and how you feel like maybe that affected your experience.
It did. It affected the longevity of it. I mean, at that time, I was a bit in the bubble. So, people talk about, oh, what was the 80s like for you? And I don't, or the 80s music of that time. I never dove too deep into it because I was just, at that point I was going from movie set to movie set to maybe, Shea Stadium to watch the Mets win the World Series in '86. That was kind of like my bubble. I mean, I did see Springsteen on the Born in the USA tour, but for the most part, I experienced it, but from the inside. But yeah, all those movies, yeah, that was, that's the heyday of getting the popcorn and being in a theater and cheering and, being on the roller coaster of what those movies did and how they influenced us. And then they became, I call those VHS tapes for the Karate Kid a 2-hour and 6-minute babysitter. You put your kid in front of the television, you pop that in, you get some stuff done. Like that
you
show.
were my babysitter for a
right.
good part of my childhood, man.
Yeah. So I'm glad positive lessons came from it.
I'm here, so you guys did something right. As I was wrapping up this show, I honestly, and I thought this a lot as I was watching it, I couldn't help but think that Pat Morita would have loved this. I feel like he would have loved this show. And I've never gotten to ask you about one of the greatest movie scenes, not just in the trilogy, but of all time, which is Mr. Miyagi teaching Daniel to wax on and wax off by using that classic art of car washing. I'd love to know what you remember most about filming that scene in front of that car. And in particular, do you remember his delivery of that line that day?
All of it. Yes. And it's I remember, that stuff is just stamped in my mind. It's really interesting. I've discussed that in the past, that why certain movies and certain scenes I've done that have become, in this case, a piece of pop culture that's still giving story. why I remember the day. I mean, I probably remember what I had for lunch that day or close to it. It just, for some reason, there's some otherworldly spotlight that when we were working that. I mean, obviously the whole wax on, wax off pay was the big payoff, you know, so we knew it was important. And that exact car is the car that's in Cobra Kai, you know. So there are times I look at the side panel on that driver's side door, and I remember the sponge hitting it and us and doing it. And that car is is not far from, I started it about a week and a half ago, and to keep it running in the wintertime. So it's special. I know I got off on a tangent there, but it's those moments that I remember it. I remember John Avildsen tossing. I said, "Where'd you get these cars?" And he yelled out, "Detroit." It was just the director gave him that ad lib because that's where the American cars were made. That stuff just sticks and resonates, and it's kind of special to have that insider's track on how that became a piece of pop culture throughout the world.
Do you still have that? Is that your car? Do you have that car?
That's my car. That's my car.
What?
Yeah.
Holy hell.
And so
that makes me feel good.
It's great. Credit the Cobra Kai production and Sony Television for bringing it down, and we put an engine in it, got it up, got the old girl back, dusted off. She's been the one constant for Daniel LaRusso that's never left his side. So
they're pulling me out of here. They're kind enough to give me a little bit of extra time. Mr. Macchio, I just want to end with by saying how much you mean to me. This story, this character, this film means to me. Like I said, you were a part of my childhood and why I love movies and why I have this job. So on behalf of all that, man, thank you for everything you've given me for your entire career.
I always appreciate your enthusiasm and energy. Thanks. Take care.
Yes, sir.
See you on the next one.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.